cricket's still number one in India, but football is catching up, and RK is here to remind us of that. We have a fascinating encounter coming up on Wednesday, England versus Croatia. How do you think the lads have been doing? Is it coming home?
I don't know what is home, because I mean a lot of people have been talking about it is coming home. Look, I mean we are in India. I mean it'll be remarkable because we are bored hearing pretty much the same story about 1966. There are a couple of dates that you distinctly remember, isn't it, when you talk about English sport? 1966 is one. Then you had 1936 when you spoke about Fred Perry as far as Wimbledon is concerned. A few things that you're reminded of almost every calendar year.
So rare.
Yeah, I know. Thanks to Andy Murray. So that story is pretty much done. Now we've got to talk about whether Gareth Southgate and his men can actually get the World Cup back to England. Yeah,
absolutely. Southgate's done some pretty good things. He's gone with a meritocracy, which has seen a lot of fresh faces come into the squad. But I get the feeling at the end of it all, that England scores goals when a big square man with a big square head goes up for a corner. Do you think that there's still potential in the England squad to compete with Croatia on a footballing level in midfield, for example?
Look, I mean, there are different ways of looking at it. I would look at, I think one of the comments that was made by Rio Ferdinand, if I'm not wrong, he said, look, I mean, you always had fantastic players, but Gareth Southgate is allowing the players to be themselves on the pitch. I think more often than not, it's about being yourself on the pitch and who kind of gets that dressing room all right. I mean, that's the team that normally does the job. We've seen what France can do in '98. We've seen what France perhaps cannot do in 2006, and we've seen a variety of things. Really doesn't always boil down to the caliber of individuals. So in that sense, I think Gareth Southgate has done really well. Coming to your point, I mean, you're spot on when you're talking about set pieces as far as England. I think most of the goals that they have scored have come through set pieces. But again, you look at the quality of opponents that they have played. I mean, with due respect to England that have come all the way, you've played Panama, you played Tunisia, you did not play a full-strength Belgium. Yes, you had one game against Colombia, which went all the way to penalties. Up against Sweden, it wasn't the greatest of games because you were not too sure which team was going to be daring, and that's why I thought a team like Belgium was daring against Brazil. So in that sense, we have not seen the daring part of the English side. It is a traditional 3-5-2. He has not switched around with the combination. So when you look at that, and when you look at Croatia, you say Croatia has been, Dalic has been far more adventurous in terms of figuring out his combination, as opposed to a Southgate who has said, look, 3-5-2 works for me with an Ashley Young on one side. It does well. So why should I kind of fix something that isn't broke? So in that sense, he's gotten the job done. Maybe this is the first real test as far as England are concerned. But when you look at it the other way, I'm saying, look, even if I'm going to approach it the way they have approached, the Croatian defenders, I know we talk about the midfield a lot. The Croatian defenders led by Lovren, they aren't the swiftest. We have seen contests between Lovren and Kane where Kane has absolutely dominated Lovren. So maybe there is not much for Gareth Southgate to say to tinker. Maybe you can play a Rashford for added pace because that could seriously trouble. Let's not forget Rashford played for 2 minutes in the last encounter. It was Sterling who started down the middle as well. And for Sterling, I mean, I know he missed a one-on-one towards the end of that first half in that quarter-final. But Sterling holds a very good bet, and Lingard is awesome in terms of running behind the defenders. Dele Alli is again somebody who can run behind the defenders. So they've got that pace if they want to utilize it. So there you go.
Absolutely. So they have the potential to play the football. They have the Sterling for the off-the-ball movement. They have the Lingard for the off-the-ball movement. And I
think they've got a good record against Croatia. Yes. If you look at the records of England up against Croatia, I think they've got good records. They've scored quite a few goals. So in terms of them going back in time and figuring out what they have done against Croatia, just remembering all the good things they've done, I think they've got a very, very good record against Croatia.
So that creates a positive atmosphere within the dressing room. You're not scared of who you're going to face. And it seems like a sensible ploy that what they did against Belgium, where they fielded the second string side and they accepted the loss. As far as Croatia is concerned, they've had a far tougher route to the semi-finals. They beat Argentina convincingly. They breezed through the group stages. They were very good in the knockouts. They held their nerve against Denmark and against Russia in front of a vociferous Russian crowd. But do you think the two extra times that they played and the two penalty shooters that they played have frayed their nerves a bit? Do you think there'll be an edge for the England game?
They could. I mean, depends. Again, I would look at it. So in terms of mentally draining them out, it would have drained them out. I mean, you're looking at 2 penalty shootouts. And let's not forget, I mean, the last of those games that they played against Russia, I'm sure Modric would have had his heart in his mouth, because I think it ricocheted off the bar and then went in as well. Because for the longest possible time, I please correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Perisic who hit it during regular time.
Yes.
It bounced off the post, and
Correct.
I mean, I couldn't understand how it did not get in. So I mean, there were a huge number of emotions, as opposed to, say, an England-Sweden game, which was easy on our hearts as well. So our blood pressures, everything was fair enough and fine and stuff. So in terms of that, maybe they've undergone a lot more. And I think it was all about you had as many as 4 playmakers as far as Croatia is concerned at one point in time. But again, you saw what can happen when a Modric drops really deep, and when Modric plays the number 10 role. I mean, you could sense that in early in the first half, Modric was dropping down deep. Croatia did not have the control, despite having a Rakitic. But I think when he went forward, that's when I think Croatia figured out. Because I think for most part of Croatia's campaign in the lead up to the World Cup, it was all about how you get 2 masterful players in that midfield, and a Rakitic and a Modric, to get the ball going, to get the team going. I think he has sorted that out. But having said that, I think it's going to be interesting to see how, I mean, let's not forget Modric, Dele Alli. It's a bit of a contest, really, isn't it? The present and perhaps the future of... He signed a contract, right? Dele Alli has signed a contract, right, with Spurs now. So the present and the future of Spurs against a wonderful shining light, which was the past of Spurs,
past,
which is a great past at that point in time for Modric. So plenty of interesting battles. So they'll concentrate heavy on Modric and Rakitic there.
Down the wings too for Croatia, what Sweden lacked, and what I believe a lot of the English the opponents that faced England up till now lacked, was pace. Now what Croatia have down the wings with Perisic, with the option of Pjaka, with Ante Rebic, who's been immense in this World Cup, is that option to stretch out the English team. And Mario Mandzukic is the smartest centre forward out there. Even factoring in Romelu Lukaku's off the ball movement, Mandzukic is of a different class altogether. And with Brozovic dropping deep, and like you said, with Modric moving to number 10, do you think Croatia have it in them to stretch the English team out? They've never, like you said, they've never shifted out of the 3-5-2. They've never had to, because none of the opponents have tested them that far. Do you think Croatia have it in them to make Southgate change a couple of things during the game?
Yeah, he can. Obviously, he can do it. But having said that, I think the reason why 3-5-2 has also worked for Southgate is because of somebody like Ashley Young down the left wing back role, if you want to call it that. Because, I mean, if you look at club football, I mean, in the big games, Mourinho has often brought in an Ashley Young. He's played Ashley Young very, very regularly. So he trusts him pretty much with and when Ashley Young plays, it's obviously, since a Luke Shaw doesn't play regularly, Damian doesn't play regularly, even if he has to start somewhere around that area. So when Ashley Young starts for United, it's invariably a 3-5-2. So Ashley Young is extremely confident about that area. When you look down the right, you've got, you've got the top Man City man coming down, and Walker coming down, and he's done a very, very good job as far as, City is concerned. So he's improved in confidence. So I think it kind of, I know you would want them to be stretched out, but having said that, the one area where they can pull a person, I think, is Jordan Henderson.
Right.
I do not know what his fitness level at this point in time. I hope he's fit. But even in the last game, Jordan Henderson was one guy who was pulled out of position, I thought. So if they can manage, if a Modric can come and slot himself around the area where Jordan Henderson hopes to kind of occupy that entire space, that could be one area where obviously the side can trouble England.
That's a very valid point. Henderson's held his own. He's been calm the entire World Cup, but like you said, he's not faced opposition of this caliber. So let's see how that plays out. There's another interesting development with Croatia, where their centre-back, the Lovren's partner Vida, is in a little bit of trouble for a political statement he made post the Russian win, and he may face a ban. In that case, you would see Korluka come in, who's around about roughly 1 million years old. How do you think Korluka and Lovren will be able to handle Kane and Sterling's off-the-ball movement?
Yeah, I think, Lovren, to be honest, hasn't handled Kane well at all. I mean, I remember, speaking to somebody of the caliber of Nemanja Vidic, because when you talk about a few defenders, you think about a few strikers who have played against them. The equation that a Kane has against Lovren is pretty much the equation that Fernando Torres had against Nemanja Vidic. And plenty of reds that he managed to pick up was Nemanja Vidic. Having said that, this is the game of their lives. It's about holding on to 90 minutes. And every time, say, and also that famous game where I think he was taken off at halftime or probably just before halftime, Lovren.
At Wembley.
Yeah, at Wembley. So it has happened in the past. But having said all of this, every time you kind of looked at a Liverpool defense and said, look, it's not holding up all right. You see the very next game, they've come up and held up all right. So in that, and Lovren has also played his part, to be honest, in that sense. So I know, you've got Van Dijk who came in and kind of calmed the nerves of that Liverpool defense, but Lovren has also seriously done his job as well. So in that sense, I think it could be that one-off game where it's about following your instructions to the T. I keep going back to that example of Roberto Martinez and Belgium. I mean, they are obviously up against a French side. So one of the things that Roberto Martinez said post that game, the quarterfinals, is the fact that, look, we all made a plan, but this was one time where we executed the plan against Belgium, or rather Brazil, to perfection. So it's about just sticking to your own plans and every man just making sure that they are in the game there. But again, coming to the English side of things, you played Sterling, you can bring in a Rashford. Absolutely. I mean, Rashford has been breathtaking. One-on-one, Rashford is as good as it can get, really. And the right foot is brilliant.
It's immense. And for all the stick that Lovren does get, he has been immense during this World Cup. He was brilliant in the Champions League final. So maybe it's time we cut him a little bit of slack. So what do you have to say about the two goalkeepers that will face off on Wednesday, Subasic and Pickford?
I think Jordan Pickford has been outstanding. I mean, when he got transferred to Everton for the kind of money that he actually went for, it was staggering, because you look at Edison that went to Man City, you look at Buffon, who went ages back to Juventus. So, I mean, you're talking about serious money. He was the third highest in terms of the transfer value. So he was marked for bigger and greater things. And let's not forget, Koeman was somebody who knows how to organize a team very, very well. It's another matter that things didn't go according to plan as far as Everton was concerned. But even while he was at Sunderland, he was just brilliant. I think Sunderland did face relegation at that point in time. He was very good. Robert Greene recently came out and said he's talked about very, very in a very high vein about Pickford there. So everything points towards Pickford. And even in that game against Sweden, I think he made a couple of crucial saves. He was instrumental in England getting to where they are. He's had a couple of saves as far as the penalties are concerned, so his confidence is sky high. And on the other side, Subasic. I mean, I thought at that point in time, if Subasic had gone out of play, his side would have seriously struggled, because I think they would have played with 10 men quite literally for that period of time. But Subasic, I know it looked like he was having a hamstring injury, but you don't see too many players come back from a hamstring pull the way Subasic did. So I'm not too sure if the Monaco man really has a hamstring, or was it just cramps or what to that extent, because the kind of performance that he put towards the end of that second half and in extra time were just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, you're talking about the semi-finals, you're talking about 4 really good quality goalkeepers. So, I mean, this one is a great match, this one.
So let's hope that Daniel Subasic's injury is not much concern and he's got enough rest till Wednesday night. We've talked about the strengths, we've talked about the weaknesses, we've talked about how Southgate can exploit Croatia, or how Croatia can exploit England. How do you see this playing out? What is your prediction for this one?
Look, I mean, almost everything seemingly suggests that England could do the job, only because of the way they have progressed and the way they have handled their nerve and the way this team is shaping up under a Gareth Southgate. I mean, having said that, obviously Croatia have done really well. There are a lot of comparisons between this team of 2018 to the Schuker's team of 1998. So they're probably looking at this team and saying, 20 years later, this is probably the best ever team that Croatia has actually got, and therefore they've gotten to the semi-finals at this stage. But I still get a feeling that England could nick it, because Croatia has got this penchant for playing along the ground. They love their passing and stuff. We've seen what has happened to Spain in the past. I mean, they were beautiful to watch, but they did not essentially go through. Maybe this time around, England have got what it takes to probably go through, even if it means playing scrappy football. I mean, Croatia definitely the better team to look. They played beautiful football, especially that game against Argentina. But I know a lot of people talk about Argentina, but Argentina did not have the greatest of defense there. So I still think England can do the job on the night.
Absolutely. It should be a cracker on Wednesday, and we'll see where home is, Zagreb or London.